Zain Orin, always knew he was different. It wasn't just his looks, though those were unusual enough, the shock of white blonde hair, the eyes that shifted from blue to violet in the light. No, it was something deeper, a restlessness in his bones, a yearning for something more than the mundane rituals of Terran life. As a child, he'd spend hours staring up at the night sky, tracing the constellations with a finger, wondering what lay beyond in the vast gulfs between the stars. When the other children played at VR games or snuck out to the Grav skate park, Zain was in his room, poring over astronaut charts and alien taxonomies. His parents chalked it up to an overactive imagination, a quirk to be indulged. They bought him model starships, sent him to space camp in the summers, but they never really understood, never felt that same tug, the bone-deep certainty that he was meant for something greater. By the time he was 16, Zain was already light years beyond his peers. He'd aced every exam, broken every record in the flight simulator. His instructors shook their heads in awe, muttering about prodigies and savants. But to Zain, it felt like treading water. Like going through the motions of a life too small to contain him. He chafed at the confines of Earth, the petty politics and squabbles. His eyes were fixed on the stars, his heart yearning for the infinite black. So when the recruiter came, with his crisp uniform and starlight glint in his eye, Zain was ready. More than ready. He stood ramrod straight, heart pounding, as the man laid out the offer. The Galactic Concordance, humanity's first contact a scant decade ago. An alliance of star-faring species united in common purpose. And now, for the first time, they were recruiting from Earth, cherry-picking the best and brightest to join their ranks. Zain didn't hesitate. Didn't bother reading the fine print on the contract, dense with alien legalese. He signed his name with a steady hand, the chromo ink shimmering in the light. His parents wept. His friends shake their heads in disbelief. Going off to fight in an alien war, to put his life on the line for creatures he'd never met. It was madness, they said, suicide. But to Zain, it was destiny. The call he'd been waiting for all his life, the siren song of the stars. He boarded the shuttle with a light step, his meager possessions slung over one shoulder. As Earth dwindled behind him, a blue-green marble suspended in the black, he felt a weight lift from his chest. A sense of lightness, of purpose. For the first time in his life, he was where he belonged. He was going to war. And he'd never been happier. The training was brutal. A crucible designed to break the weak and forge the strong. Zain and his fellow recruits, the best Earth had to offer, were pushed to their limits and beyond. Mental and physical, technological and tactical. Their instructors were a motley assortment of aliens, each more bizarre than the last. The insectoid Kill Ihai, a hen drill sergeant, with his glittering compound eyes and razor-sharp mandibles. The ethereal Korax technomancer, her skin shifting through a dizzying spectrum of colors. They drove the recruits mercilessly, breaking down Terran preconceptions and rebuilding them in the image of the Concordance. New ways of thinking, of moving and fighting and being. Zain took to it like he was born for it. The flash-learning technomancy, imprinting alien knowledge directly into his brain. The tactical simulators, each scenario more fiendishly difficult than the last. Even the physical training. The grueling obstacle courses and hand-to-hand drills. His body changed, hardened. Lean muscle replacing the soft padding of youth. His mind expanded, assimilating alien concepts and strategies. The old Zain, the dreamy-eyed boy with his head in the stars, was burned away, tempered in the fires of the Concordance, reforged into something new. The other recruits watched him warily, with a mix of awe and envy. He was the best of them, the shining star. The instructors singled him out, heaped praise and ever greater challenges. It was whispered he had the eye of a Concordance leadership, that great things were in store. But Zain paid it no mind. He was lost in the rapture of it. The sheer exhilaration of pushing himself beyond any limit he'd ever imagined. Of finally being where he belonged. And when the call came, when the klaxons sounded, and the fleet marshaled for war, he was ready. More than ready. He strode to his fighter with a calm surety, his flight suit a second skin. Around him, the docking bay was barely controlled chaos. Technicians rushing to and fro, pilots double and triple checking their craft. A dozen different species, united by a common purpose, a common enemy, the Vorlons. A name spoken in hushed whispers, even among the battle-hardened veterans of the Concordance, an ancient race, steeped in mystery and dark legend, rarely seen, but always felt, a cold shadow at the edges of known space. For centuries they had watched and waited, biding their time as the younger races squabbled and skirmished. But now, for reasons known only to themselves, they had chosen to act, to test the strength and resolve of the Concordance. And Zain would be there to meet them, to stand in the breach and weather the storm. As he settled into the cockpit of his fighter, feeling the hum of alien technology thrumming through his bones, he felt a fierce joy, a sense of belonging, of rightness. The Vorlon ships appeared out of the black like wraiths, their hulls a mottled gray that seemed to drink in the light. They were vast, dwarfing even the mighty dreadnoughts of the Concordance. Their shapes defied comprehension, all jagged angles and impossible curves. And they were fast. Faster than anything Zain had ever seen or imagined. One moment they were distant specks, lost in the endless night. The next they were upon the fleet, weapons blazing with a sickly green fire. Zain threw his fighter into a dizzying spiral, his hands a blur on the controls. Around him, the void lit up with the flash of explosions, the glare of energy shields straining to breaking point. The comm channels were a cacophony of screams and barked orders, a dozen alien tongues blending into a single desperate voice. But Zain was calm, focused. His world narrowed to the controls in his hands, the readouts flashing before his eyes. He jinked and juked, rolling and spinning, always a half-second ahead of the enemy fire. His wingmates fell away, picked off one by the relentless Vorlon assault. But Zain flew on, a lone mote of defiance in the face of annihilation. He scored hit after hit, his weapons slicing through the enemy shields like a hot knife through butter. But it wasn't enough. It could never be enough. For every Vorlon ship he crippled or destroyed, two more took its place. They seemed endless, a tide of gray metal and green fire pouring from the depths of space. The Concordance line buckled, then broke. Mighty warships shattered like glass, their crews spilling into the void. Fighters spiraled out of control, vanishing in silent puffs of flame. The comm channels went silent, one by one, until only the crackle of static remained. And still Zain fought on. Alone, outmatched, his fighter battered and scorched. He wove a dance of desperate defiance, buying time with each precious second. Time for the survivors to flee, to carry word back to the heart of the Concordance. In the end, it was a stray shot that did it. A lance of green fire that slipped through his weakening shields, shearing through his port engine. His fighter shuddered, alarm screaming in his ears, the acrid stench of burning polymer filling his helmet. He struggled with the controls, trying to hold her steady. But it was no use. The Vorlon ships closed in, their weapons stabbing out with surgical precision, picking him apart, piece by piece. Zain gritted his teeth, his vision graying at the edges. He fought to stay conscious, to keep his finger on the trigger. If this was to be his end, he would make it one worthy of remembrance. A final blaze of glory, to light the void and sear his name into the annals of history. But even as he lined up one last desperate shot, a new voice crackled over the comm. An alien voice, deep and resonant, buzzing with strange harmonics. Zain Orin of Earth. Stand down. Zain blinked, his finger hovering over the trigger. He shook his head, convinced he was hallucinating. Some final trick of a dying brain. But the voice came again, insistent, commanding. Your fight is over. Starchild. The test is ended. You have proven yourself and your species. Test. Zain's mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. The Vorlon ships hung in space before him, their weapons powered down, waiting. And then, with a sudden blinding clarity, he understood. The invasion, the battle, all of it. It had been a ruse, a feint, a crucible to test the mettle of the Concordance's newest recruits. And he had passed. Flown and fought and bled, and proven himself worthy. Worthy of the Vorlon's attention, their respect. Slowly, painfully, he unclenched his hand from the trigger. Let his fighter drift, dead in space. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. The Vorlon ships parted before him, opening like a flower, inviting him in. With a last look at the stars, the infinite black he had always called home, Zain guided his crippled fighter into their embrace. The Vorlon ship was a labyrinth, all endless corridors and vaulted chambers. Zain moved through it as if in a dream, his feet guided by some inner compass. The air was thick with strange scents, alien harmonies thrumming through the walls. He should have been afraid, should have been awed, or at least curious. But all he felt was a sense of inevitability, of destiny, long delayed but finally fulfilled. The chamber, when he reached it, was vast. An echoing space that seemed to go on forever, its walls lost in shadow. And there, waiting for him, was the Vorlon. It was a thing of smoke and shadow, a vague outline in the gloom. But Zain could feel its presence, pressing down on him like a physical weight. Ancient and powerful, a being that had seen the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. "Welcome, Starchild," the voice was in his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "You have come far, and through much hardship." Zain squared his shoulders, meeting that unseen gaze. "I have done what was required." Yes, was that amusement in the voice or approval? "You have passed the test, proven yourself worthy of our attention." "And what now?" Zain asked, his voice steady. "What fate have you chosen for me?" The Vorlon seemed to consider, the air around it shimmering with unreadable emotion. "A great task lies before you, Starchild. A destiny long foretold in the dance of galaxies." Zain frowned, a flicker of the old defiance stirring in his breast. "I make my own destiny." The Vorlon laughed, a sound like the tolling of great bells. "Indeed, it is your strength, your fire, that has brought you to this moment, that will carry you through the trials to come." It leaned forward, and Zain got the impression of eyes, ancient and knowing, staring into his soul. "The Concordance is but the beginning, Starchild, a stepping stone to a higher purpose. You will be the bridge, the beacon, the light that leads the way." Zain shook his head, trying to make sense of it. "I don't understand." The Vorlon's voice was gentle, almost pitying. "In time, you will understand all. The role you must play in the great unfolding." It straightened, and the air crackled with sudden energy. "But first you must heal, must rest and grow strong. For the path ahead is long and fraught with peril." Zain opened his mouth to protest, to demand answers. But a sudden wave of dizziness washed over him, a bone-deep fatigue. He swayed on his feet, his vision tunneling. The last thing he saw, before the darkness claimed him, was the Vorlon. Watching him, its form a swirl of smoke and shadow, waiting, as it had always waited, for the unfolding of destiny. Zain dreamed of stars and fire, of battles past and future. He saw himself, a figure of light and shadow, striding across the galaxy. Worlds rose and fell at his passing, civilizations blooming and withering like flowers in the sun. And always, at the edges of his vision, the Vorlons watched. Their plans, their purposes, an ever-shifting web of cause and effect. He was a part of it, he realized. A key piece moved across the board by unseen hands. But even in the dream, he rebelled against that fate, railed against being a pawn in some cosmic game. He was Zain Orin, a child of Earth. He would make his own destiny, forge his own path among the stars. The dream shifted, changed. He saw the Concordance, fractured and afraid in the face of the Vorlon's power. Saw the seeds of doubt and dissension, sown by careful hands. It would fall, he knew with sudden certainty, all, and be scattered to the cosmic winds. But from its ashes, something new would rise. Alliance forged in the fires of adversity, led by a figure of light and shadow, a beacon in the dark. He saw the battles to come, the challenges that awaited, the enemies that would stand against them, within and without. But he saw too the bonds of fellowship, the ties of loyalty and love that would hold them together. And at the center of it all, a world. A shining jewel hung in the void. Its surface a tapestry of green and blue, of life in all its forms. He knew it with a bone-deep certainty. Knew its name, whispered in the dreams of 1,000 species. Earth, his home and the heart of something greater. A beacon, a rallying point, the seed from which a new future would grow. The dream faded, and with it the certainty. But the sense of purpose remained, a fire in his bones. He would return, would take up the mantle that had been laid upon him, would become the leader, the beacon that the galaxy needed. But first he would heal, would rest and grow strong. For the path ahead was long and fraught with peril, but he would walk it, with head held high and fire in his heart, for he was Zain Orin, a child of Earth, and his destiny awaited. Zain awoke to the soft beeping of medical equipment, the sterile tang of recycled air. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. He was in a med bay, he realized. The walls a featureless gray, the equipment sleek and alien. He tried to sit up, and winced as pain lanced through his body. He was bandaged, he saw, his skin a patchwork of grafts and synth flesh. The price of his defiance written in blood and bone. Easy, the voice was soft, melodic. He turned his head and saw a figure seated beside his bed. Aurorax, her skin a shifting kaleidoscope of color. "You are safe now." Zain licked his lips, his throat dry and cracked. "Where am I?" On a concordance ship, the Aurorax leaned forward, her eyes deep and luminous. "We found you, drifting in the wreckage of the battle. Brought you here to heal." Zain closed his eyes, memories rushing back. The battle, the Vorlons, the dreams, and the terrible purpose that had been laid upon him. "How long?" he asked, his voice rough. "A month." The Aurorax's voice was gentle. "Your injuries were severe. It took time to knit flesh and bone." A month. Zain's mind reeled, trying to grasp it. A month lost, while the galaxy spun on without him. While the seeds of the future were sown, and destiny unfolded. "I have to go back," he said, struggling to sit up. "To Earth. There's something I have to do." The Aurorax laid a hand on his chest, gently pressing him back down. "In time," she said. "In time," she said. "When you are healed and strong enough for the journey. The path before you is long, and you will need all your strength." Zain wanted to argue, to insist that he was ready now. But he could feel the weakness in his limbs, the dull ache of healing wounds. He knew she was right. He needed time to recover and regain his strength. "Rest now," the Aurorax said, her voice a soothing balm. "Gather your strength. The galaxy will still be there when you are ready." Zain let his eyes drift closed, surrendering to the weariness that tugged at him. But even as he slipped back into sleep, his mind was racing. Planning, preparing for the trials ahead. He would heal, would grow strong in body and mind, and then he would return to Earth to take up the mantle that had been laid upon him, to become the leader, the beacon that the galaxy needed. For he was Zain Orin, a child of Earth, a Starchild with a destiny written in the dance of galaxies, and nothing, not the Vorlons or the Concordance or the vast reaches of space, would stand in his way. The weeks passed. As Zain healed and grew strong, he threw himself into his recovery, pushing his body to its limits and beyond. The med bay became his whole world, a crucible of pain and determination. But even as his body mended, his mind was elsewhere. Lost in dreams and visions, the tantalizing glimpses of the future that had been granted him. He saw the galaxy poised on the brink of great change, and he saw himself, the fulcrum upon which that change would turn. The Aurorax was his constant companion, guiding him through the long hours of therapy and meditation. She spoke to him of the Concordance, of its history and purpose, of the great challenges that faced it, and the role he would play in meeting those challenges. "You are special. Zain Orin," she told him, her eyes glinting with a strange light. "Chosen by fate or chance or the will of the galaxy. A Starchild, born to lead us into a new era." Zain listened and learned. He absorbed the wisdom of the Aurorax, the knowledge and insights of 100 alien cultures. He felt himself changing, growing, becoming something more than he had been. And always at the back of his mind, the call of Earth, the pull of his homeworld, and the destiny that awaited him there. He knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that his path led back to that shining jewel in the void, back to the cradle of humanity and the seed of something greater. At last, the day came when he was deemed healed. When the bandages came off and the med bay doors opened, revealing a ship abuzz with activity. The Concordance was mobilizing, he learned, preparing for a great undertaking. "The Vorlons have withdrawn," the Aurorax told him, her voice tight with tension. "Retreated back to their own space after the battle. But they will return, in force, and with great purpose. We must be ready." Zain nodded, his heart quickening. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. The call to action, the summons to destiny. He knew with a sudden fierce joy that his time had come. He strode through the ship, his steps sure and purposeful. The crew parted before him, murmuring in awe and respect. Word of his deeds had spread, it seemed, of the lone human who had stood against the Vorlons and earned their grudging respect. He came at last to the bridge, a vast chamber alive with the hum of alien technology. And there, waiting for him, was the captain. A tall, proud figure, his uniform ablaze of color and rank. Zain Orin, the captain said, his voice ringing with authority. The Concordance owes you a great debt. You have proven yourself in battle and in healing. Now we have need of your strength once more. Zain straightened, his heart pounding. I am ready, sir. The captain nodded, his eyes glinting with approval. Good. For we have a mission for you, Starchild. A task that only you can accomplish. He gestured to the view screen, the vast expanse of space whirling past. We have received a distress call from a world on the edge of concordant space. A human world long thought lost to the void. Zain's breath caught in his throat. A human world. Out here among the stars, it seemed impossible, a dream conjured by his fevered imagination. They call it New Eden, the captain continued. A colony established in the early days of human expansion. Before the Concordance, before the Vorlons, long thought lost, swallowed by the void. He turned to Zain, his eyes intent. But now they have returned, reached out across the light years, seeking aid and alliance. And you, Zain Orin, will be our emissary, our ambassador, to this lost branch of humanity. Zain's mind reeled, trying to grasp the implications. A lost colony, a remnant of Earth's first tentative steps to the stars. What wonders might they have discovered in their long isolation? What secrets hidden from the galaxy at large? And he would be the one to find out. To forge the bond between this New Eden and the Concordance and bring them into the fold. It was a heady prospect, a challenge worthy of his newfound strength. I accept, he said, his voice ringing with conviction. I will go to New Eden and bring them the greetings of the Concordance. Of all the peoples of the galaxy. The captain nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I knew you would, Starchild. Your destiny awaits. Zain felt a thrill run through him, a surge of excitement and trepidation. This was it, the first step on the path that had been laid out before him. The first test in the great unfolding of fate. He would not fail, could not fail. For he was Zain Orin, Starchild of Earth, the chosen one, the beacon in the dark. And his journey was just beginning. The ship dropped out of warp at the edge of the New Eden system, the stars snapping back into focus. Zain stood on the bridge, his heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the moment of truth, the first contact with the lost colony of humanity. He had spent the journey in deep study, poring over the scant records of New Eden. It had been established in the early days of Earth's expansion, a brave band of colonists seeking a new life among the stars. But something had gone wrong, their communications falling silent after a few short years. They had been written off as lost, swallowed by the void. But now, centuries later, they had returned, reaching out across the light years, seeking contact with their distant kin. It was a miracle, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. And Zain would be the one to greet them, to learn their secrets and bring them into the fold of the Concordance. It was a heady prospect, a challenge worthy of his newfound strength. The ship glided into orbit, and Zain got his first glimpse of New Eden. It was a jewel of a world, blue and green and wreathed in clouds, so similar to Earth and yet subtly different. The continents were strange, unfamiliar shapes, the oceans a shade too blue, the land a touch too verdant, but it was beautiful. A shining beacon, a reminder of the wonders that awaited in the vast reaches of space. Zain felt his heart swell with pride, with a fierce joy. This was his destiny, his calling, to reach out to the lost and lonely and bring them into the light. The shuttle dropped him at the edge of the colony, a vast sprawl of gleaming domes and spires. He stepped out onto the alien soil, his heart pounding with anticipation. The air was sweet and clean, carrying scents of unknown flowers and fruits, the sky a perfect, cloudless blue. And there, waiting for him, was a delegation. Tall, Proud figures, their skin pale and their eyes a piercing blue. They wore simple robes, unadorned save for a single emblem. A stylized tree, its branches reaching for the sky. "Welcome, Zain Orin," the leader said, his voice deep and resonant. "We have waited long for this day. For the return of our kin from across the stars." Zain bowed, his heart full to bursting. "I bring you greetings from Earth and the Concordance, from all the peoples of the galaxy." The leader smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "We are honored, Starchild. Come, walk with me. There is much to discuss and much to learn." Zain fell into step beside him, his mind whirling with questions. He wanted to know everything, to drink in the wonders of this lost world. But he forced himself to be patient, to let the story unfold in its own time. And unfold it did. As they walked the winding paths of the colony, the leader spoke of their history, of the trials and triumphs that had shaped them, of the strange powers that had begun to manifest among them in the long centuries of isolation. "We are changed," Zain Orin, the leader, said, his voice soft with wonder. "Evolved in ways we never could have imagined. The gifts of the mind, the ability to touch the very fabric of reality." He turned to Zain, his eyes glinting with a strange light. "And you, Starchild, you have the potential, the seed of greatness within you. We have seen it in the dance of fate." Zain's breath caught in his throat, a chill running down his spine. The dance of fate. The same phrase the Vorlons had used in his dreams. What did it mean? What destiny awaited him here on this lost world? He opened his mouth to ask, but the leader held up a hand. "In time, all will be revealed. For now, rest and recover from your journey. Tomorrow, we will begin your training, your initiation into the ways of New Eden." Zain wanted to protest, to demand answers. But he could feel the weariness in his limbs, the toll of the long journey from Earth. And so he let himself be led to his quarters, a simple room with a view of the alien sky. He lay down on the bed, his mind awhirl with questions and fears. But as he slipped into sleep, a strange peace settled over him. A sense of rightness, of destiny fulfilled, for he was exactly where he was meant to be. On the threshold of a new chapter, a new adventure, and whatever trials awaited him, whatever secrets lay hidden on this lost world, he would face them with courage and conviction, with the fire of the Starchild burning in his breast. The training was like nothing Zain had ever experienced. A gauntlet of mental and physical challenges, designed to push him to his limits and beyond. He was taught to harness the strange powers that lurked within him, to bend reality to his will. It was exhilarating, and terrifying in equal measure. He could feel himself changing, evolving, becoming something more than human, more than mortal. The seed of greatness buried deep within him began to sprout and grow. His teachers were the wisest of New Eden, the most gifted and powerful. They spoke to him of the nature of the universe, of the great cycles of creation and destruction, of the role he would play in the unfolding of destiny. "You are a bridge, Zain Orin," they told him, their eyes glinting with fierce pride. "A conduit between the old ways and the new. You will lead us into the future, into a new era of greatness." Zain listened and learned. He absorbed their wisdom, their knowledge, and as he grew in power and understanding, he began to see the shape of the destiny that awaited him. He saw the Concordance, fractured and afraid in the face of the Vorlon threat. He saw the lost colonies, scattered across the stars, waiting for a leader to unite them. And he saw himself a figure of light and shadow, striding across the galaxy like a colossus. It was a heady vision, a dizzying prospect. But Zain embraced it with all the fire and passion of his youth. He would be that leader, that visionary. He would forge a new alliance, a new power to stand against the darkness. And at the heart of it all, the lost world of New Eden. The birthplace of a new kind of human, a new chapter in the story of the stars. He would lead them out of isolation into the light of the galaxy. And together, they would shape the future and claim their rightful place among the great powers of the cosmos. But even as he reveled in his newfound strength, his newfound purpose, a shadow lurked at the edges of his mind. A whisper of doubt, of unease, for he had seen something else in his visions, something darker and more twisted, a shadow within the heart of New Eden itself, a rot at the core of their grand designs. He had seen the price of their power, the cost of their evolution. The terrible sacrifices, the unspeakable rites that had twisted them, body and soul. And he had seen the endgame, the ultimate fate that awaited them all. A fate of fire and blood, of madness and despair. A fate that would consume them all, unless he could find a way to stop it, to break the cycle and forge a new path. It was a heavy burden, a terrible responsibility. But Zain shouldered it with all the strength and courage of the Starchild. He would not fail, could not fail, for the sake of New Eden and all the lost souls of the galaxy. And so he trained and planned and prepared for the great battle to come. The battle for the soul of New Eden and the future of the human race. A battle that would echo across the stars and shape the destiny of the galaxy for eons to come. Zain stood at the edge of the abyss, the wind whipping at his hair and clothes. Before him stretched the great rift, a jagged scar in the surface of New Eden. A wound left by the terrible forces that had twisted the world, body and soul. And there, waiting for him at the bottom, was the heart of the darkness. The source of the rot, the corruption that threatened to consume them all. He could feel it, pulsing like a cancerous growth. A malevolent intelligence, vast and ancient and utterly alien. The anomaly his teachers had called it, their voices hushed with fear and reverence. The price of our power, the seed of our destruction. It must be destroyed if we are to have any hope of survival. And so Zain had come, alone and armed only with his wits and his newfound powers. He had come to face the darkness, to unmake the shadow that lurked at the heart of New Eden. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the plunge. And then, with a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening, he leapt into the abyss. He fell, the wind howling in his ears, the walls of the rift rushing past in a blur. And as he fell, he reached out with his mind, his senses, seeking the anomaly, the twisted heart of the world. He found it, a pulsing knot of darkness and despair. A vortex of madness and corruption drawing him in like a black hole. He could feel its tendrils, its whispers, slithering into his mind, promising power, promising godhood if only he would submit. But Zain resisted with all the strength of the Starchild. He fought back, his mind a blazing sword, cutting through the shadows. And as he fell, he reached out, his power a lance of pure light. He struck the anomaly, a searing blow that shook the foundations of the world. He could feel it recoil, a scream of rage and pain echoing through the cosmos. But it was not enough, not nearly enough, and so he struck again, and again, pouring all his strength, all his courage, into the fight. The anomaly writhed and twisted, a mass of shadow and horror. But slowly, inexorably, it began to unravel, to dissolve, under the onslaught of Zain's power. And then, with a final titanic effort, he tore it asunder. The anomaly shattered, its darkness dispersing like mist in the sun. And Zain was left alone, hovering in the heart of the abyss. He looked up to the distant light of the surface. And he knew, with a sudden fierce joy, that he had won. That New Eden was free, purged of the corruption that had festered at its heart. But even as he reveled in his victory, a new realization dawned. For the anomaly had not been the true enemy, the true threat to New Eden. It had only been a symptom, a manifestation of a deeper rot. No, the true enemy was within the hearts and minds of the people of New Eden, twisted by centuries of isolation and experimentation. The true battle was still to come, a war for the soul of a world.